So, welcome everyone. Will Wright with AIA Los Angeles. I'm here to really help bring everyone together and to connect us to our beloved co-chairs of this task force. I'm really thankful for their leadership and their involvement. Greg and Mohammed, thank you. And we are also joined by quite a few others. Carlo, who is the AIA-LA Executive Director, and Tony Lewis, the AIA-LA Vice President, President-elect. And as we get into this conversation, I'll just remind everyone, just please keep yourself muted unless you're actively talking or discussing. Right now, we're going to give it over to Greg and Mohammed, our chairs, and we're going to find a way to really assign each and every one of you an activity as it corresponds to some of your interests, but also just where we've discovered we will need resources. And we just are extremely grateful and thankful. And for anyone that's on the call today that you did personally or professionally lose your home or your house or your work studio, we are here for you. We want to work this to work. We're here to support you. So reach out, please reach out to me directly if you can, and we will find a way to bring everyone together in this moment of crisis. So with that, Greg and Mohammed, thank you. And I hand the discussion over to you.
Thank you so much, Will. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Carlo. I'm going to do a very brief intro and hand over to my dear friend and colleague and co-chair, Greg Kochanowski. Thanks everyone for joining. For those of you who've signed up and expressed interest in the various areas from community outreach, engagement and outreach, to building code reform and advocacy, streamlining the processes associated with rebuilding and perhaps interim building, building code reform, advocacy, insurance claims and assistance, disaster recovery, and on-site assistance, as well as design and consultation services. We've been very busy over the past number of days since our initial meeting, working with Tony and Hava Danielson and Will and Carlo at many levels, culminating in a meeting recently with AIA California, AIA Pasadena, and Foothill, as well as our sister chapters in the area lending their expertise and assistance to formulate a structure with which to proceed in optimal ways. At the local level, we are meeting, we have an all-day meeting on Saturday, which is the annual board action plan meeting, which will necessarily be dominated by the post-fire recovery, rebuilding, and future resilience. And at that time, we will be sifting through the applications, developing the sub task forces, if you will, and getting back to those who've expressed interest. I'd like to hand over to Greg to summarize was January the 30th, the meeting with all of the members that I described. And Tony, please feel free to chime in. You were there too. And so I'll hand over to Greg. But before I do, I'll say the aim is to give you guys information on what we've been doing and where we're going next, as well as to open up the room in an orderly fashion to questions and insights that you might have. We'll have to find a way to get a list going, and we ask that we stick to the list. Yes, I'm going to hand over to Greg Kochanowski now.
Thanks, Mohammed. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, I just before I just want to reiterate two things that Mohammed said and Will said. The amount of enthusiasm and dedication and intelligence and expertise that we've been experiencing is just overwhelming. And I just want to thank you all again for all of your interest and enthusiasm. This has been we had only over 400 people sign up just to volunteer. That's just our chapter. Then we have Pasadena Foothill and Long Beach, San Fernando Valley are also getting volunteer requests in. Everyone's trying to figure out how to help. And then AIA California also shared with us that they have a volunteer list. So a lot of our activities over the last 3 weeks or so have been, how do we organize this effort? How do we work together in a consolidated way with a unified front, so that we can really be efficient and nimble and agile as we move over the coming months. And so that's one thing we did was, in addition to just a lot of emails and a lot of intake, we had a meeting between all the local chapters that I just mentioned, as well as AIA California.
Is this parcel 7 that's pretty flat, or parcel B?
Sorry, Robert, I think you need to mute yourself.
No, I'm actually in another meeting right now.
There he goes. Okay. So we had the folks from, we had Nikki and Rebecca fly down from Sacramento down to meet with us and help really organize a meeting of all the chapters at Caltech. And so I'm going to show you some the summarization of that meeting and talk about what we discussed. They shared a whole series of resources that the AIA has been developing over the years for disaster recovery. Some of you might know these resources, some of you may not, but they have everything from disaster recovery toolkits, where you go to a disaster recovery center and interact with the general public, to various information and education information, sort of PDF brochures, and a wide variety of things. So we're going to share some of those SKUs with you tonight, so you can download that if you didn't know about it. And primarily, so there's that. I'm going to talk to you about that. In addition to this, because of the size of the effort of the problem that we're undertaking right now, this is not just an architectural problem. It's not just an architectural solution. And so we have assembled, with really Pasadena taking the charge on this, to assemble a interdisciplinary meeting between ASLA, APA, USGBC, ULI, and a few other organizations, I believe, for a meeting to come together and actually compare notes and figure out how we can also work inter-organizationally, interdisciplinarily across this. So we all have our own disciplines, but we also need to think of this holistically. And we're trying to find a way to figure out how to do that. And our meeting next week is going to be the first step in that process. So some of your volunteer efforts might involve other disciplines coexisting in some of those initiatives. So anyway, we just wanted to share that with you as well. So that said, enough talking. Let me try and get to some of the exhibits here that I can share with you. And these are brief summaries again. So so let me see, screen, share. You can see my super messy background. Okay, let's see here. Sorry, I just kind of moved some stuff out of the way here. Okay, so the first thing I just wanted to share, I just reduced the deck because it was like a 50-page deck that California prepared for this. But I wanted to really just share some of the content that AIA California really utilized in the meeting that we had. And part of this is aligning expectations about where we are in the process, where and how far we have to go and where we should be working right now. And a little bit of this has to do with, we are in a kind of recovery phase right now, right? We're not really in a response phase anymore. AIA doesn't really have to do with first responders and things like that. But right now, we're in this process of figuring out how environmental cleanup is going to work, streamlining permitting, community planning, et cetera, et cetera. And part of our efforts that we're planning, that we're looking to structure all of your energy around, is really within this recovery kind of phase, which could be 4 months, could be 6 months, depending on how long the debris cleanup takes and the infrastructure rebuilding takes. There's a bandwidth here to actually think through this problem in a really sort of comprehensive way. And so I wanted to just put a check for everybody to really understand where we are in this process. I know everybody's looking to move very quickly, and I think that other forces will be keeping us from just logistically starting construction like next week or something like that, right? So I think we have time to plan and be smart and really be effective. And as we click through this, and sorry, I have Zoom thing blocking my way to navigate through this. Series of resources I just wanted to share, comprehend the component disaster response toolkit. Again, you can take screenshots of this, and there's some SKUs at the back, but it really talks through this overall process and where we as AIA members and architects can begin to engage at each one of these steps. And as we move into, again, we're in this for the long haul as an organization. And so even as we're moving out of, let's say, recovery steps and into rebuilding, we are still going to want to be meeting as an organization and helping to help our own members and help the general public in that rebuilding process. And then in addition to that, thinking about the review of that, developing a post-occupancy analysis or a post-event analysis in a way, so that when we get to a readiness stage, to prepare sort of a new readiness stage for the city. And so the cycle will start all over again at some point in the future, but this is part of where we are. We're sort of midstream in this. And so the long haul, year-long effort is going to close the circle for us as an organization to make sure that we are, and all of you are kind of involved in that process. Disaster Systems Handbook is another resource, and I'm going to go through these quickly because I want to get to what we actually discussed. But I wanted to make this available for you if you didn't know it. So home hardening, et cetera, et cetera. There's a series of varieties. If you want to take a screenshot of the last page, I'll make that available. One thing I wanted to note was, if you don't know about the California Architectural Foundation, and you know of architects who've either lost their homes or been displaced, AIA, through the California Architectural Foundation, is developing a fund. And that fund is meant to sort of pay out to various architects who have had hardship. And so they're just taking names and information. It can be yourself, it can be somebody you know, and they're assembling that database. So I wanted to make that available to all of you, in case you did not know about this. They're currently gathering resources for AIA members. And the last is this QR code that if you want to take a screenshot to download, or a photo to download all of these documents, I think this might be very useful for you. Okay, that said, that's my little primer, sorry. Our plan, what we went through last week, was really looking through a kind of a coordinated response. So all the various chapters got together. We went and we did a wide set of brainstorming sessions from what would be what you want to see immediately, what's long-term efforts, what's midterm efforts, what other allied professionals do we need in this involvement, and what should we be doing as an organization? What is our role? We can't do everything. What should we be doing? And we've broken this down into 4, maybe somewhat obvious, but I think they're all deep in their own right in terms of content categories. One is advocacy, developing a unified playbook policy playbook and real world applications to guide local advocacy efforts. That's for streamlining, that's for permitting, that's for various kinds of policy related activities. The other is education, and that's probably the thickest version of all of these. The deepest is actually developing pretty in-depth, not only webinars and lectures for our members and for the general public, but also public events, other forms of publications that we can be putting on the website. A really sort of robust educational effort that will be one for members that will talk about the entire rebuilding process, from cleanup, infrastructure, insurance, home hardening techniques, landscape, policy, you name it. So sort of 9 points to that, which I can share with you. As well as then, how do we communicate that? And that's really to enable all of you and all our members to be educated in the overall process, so that when we go to our clients, we are well informed. And a lot of you are already well informed. So it's already trying to like fill gaps and actually bring people up. And so when we meet with clients, we can be educating them about this process, and what they should expect and what we bring as architects, in addition to how they might hire an architect. What does that involve, et cetera. I think there's some general education with regard to that too. Third is communication, and I know Carlo has been very vocal about this, and I'm really excited about, we need to be a loud voice in the public space, in the public arena. We typically, as architects, shy away, and this is the time for us to step forward and really be out in the public realm. And I think that takes a few different avenues. That's writing op-eds. That's going to council meetings, taking your 1 minute and actually advocating. It's going to be it's going out into council offices, going to meet with various elected officials. I think we have been in contact with a variety of elected officials, and are getting inroads into meeting with the mayor's rebuilding team, as well as other organizations that are forming, that are looking to sort of tackle the rebuilding effort. So that's kind of communications. That sort of straddles between communications and advocacy in some way, but that's actually an essential part of this whole thing. And then the third is really coordinated resources, which is what we're trying to do now, and what we've been doing in terms of trying not to duplicate activities between the different chapters, and to try and provide a level of clarity and a kind of authoritative voice, if you will, for the general public and for our members, so that we can be seen as the source to go to. So that if you go to Pasadena's site, or you go to our site, or the LA meeting, or any of the other chapters, that the same information will exist there, and that they might have slight nuances based on their locale, but we're really trying to have consistency built into this entire. And that takes a lot of effort. But we've started that process, and we're well on the inroads to doing that. Whole series of what the AIA can do we went through, and again, we can share some of these, but it gets to these 4 categories of advocacy, position statements, public comments, et cetera. We've already started this process of aligning with our outside organizations to coordinate efforts, meeting with the Coastal Commission, et cetera, although they're maybe not relevant anymore. Education for clients and education for members, as I mentioned earlier. And so I think we're going to think about those differently, and this is where all of you come in. This is why I'm presenting this, is because this becomes the armature through which we are going to structure all of these efforts and all of this enthusiasm and knowledge. So as Mohammed mentioned, the AIA is actually the most resourced of all the chapters, and it has the most committee structures built within it. And so we're going to take these efforts and actually utilize those structures of the committees to organize these different categories of activities and volunteer efforts, if you will. So that's what's happening on Saturday, and then and throughout next week and the coming week, we will be then starting to associate people with different committees and try and break this into bite-sized pieces, if you will, to really act a lot more effectively, deliberately, and efficiently. I think that's about it. So these were some of the education aspects we were looking at: debris cleanup, infrastructure, housing, understanding insurance, home hardening. You know a lot of these and probably expect a lot of these. I think one of the critical ones would be really setting realistic expectations of timelines, and that's going to be working with Cal OES, with Department of Public Works, with the city, with the county, to understand how that process is going and knowing that information somewhat in real time, so that as you are getting inquiries or as you are starting to think about, as people who have been affected are trying to think about how they are going to rebuild and when they should start thinking about rebuilding, this can give some relative expectations accurately. I think that's about it. I'm going to stop sharing. Whoops, stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? There we go. And go to, I know this is 25 minutes. I know we want to have conversation. I'll let us any questions. So I'm going to stop there and let a dialogue start. I hope I captured everything, Mohammed and Will and Tony.
Thank you.
And Carlo. So please chime in.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mohammed. I do want to ask if anyone on the call, I may know of a few, but if anyone on the call has lost their home, please let us know. Maybe we could include you in the conversation at the very beginning here. I don't want to call on you just because I think I know, but please do that. If you feel comfortable sharing that with us, let us know. If you've lost your home during these recent fires, I'd love to put you in the call at the very beginning here.
A poor prime day. I'm the principal of my firm. I lost my place in the fires.
So sorry.
Thank you.
This is May. Yeah, and of course, last time we talked about my property, we lost my home and also my office during the fire.
Thank you, May. And anyone else on the call that feels comfortable sharing that? Well, the only reason, thank you so much. I'm asking that for many reasons, but one of the reasons is, Apurva and May, if you don't mind, and you don't have to do this right now, but if you don't mind, if you can continue to connect with us and let us know what you need, that will be extremely beneficial to how we organize ourselves. And so, we're here for you. We really want to find a way to be responsive to your time of need, but also help that inform our response efforts. So if you have any ideas to share right now, let us know. Otherwise, we'll include you in the discussion moving forward as well.
Will, would you mind turning your audio up a little bit?
I can try to do that. Let me see.
Oh, you bet. That's it. Don't worry if it doesn't.
And then I do encourage, I know Hunter, you've shared some resources. Ben Loescher, you've shared some ideas. Would love to include you in this initial round of conversation. I don't know if either of you are ready to open with some remarks or some observations. And Deborah Weintraub, I would love to hear your thoughts from as an AIA member, as an architect, as an Angelino, if you mind sharing what you like, some insight on your behalf, if you're comfortable.
I'm happy to speak for a moment as an AIA member. I'm not speaking officially for the city of LA. I need to qualify it, but we're at my place of employment, which is the Bureau of Engineering and the Department of Public Works for the city. We're deeply involved in the initial cleanup efforts with EPA and then with the Corps of Engineers, as well as doing helping to place mitigation measures to prevent runoff from the hillsides that have been denuded by the fires. But I support all the AIA efforts. I think what you spoke about, Greg, about having a voice in the public dialogue is really important because the discussions about the initial response was everyone can rebuild exactly what they have, and yet they have to bring their homes up to code. Some of the streets are not up to the standards that they're designated. So there's a lot of dialogue that's going to go on. Also, the insurance companies may not be inclined to come back unless the houses are built better. So I just really encourage you to be present with the city and the county, because the city has set up task forces. Again, primarily we're focused right now on the initial phase 1, phase 2 cleanup effort and mitigation for rain. But the county has, I think at this point, 9 different task forces that are talking about a lot of the same issues that AIA wants to address. So again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the city, but I'm happy to be a conduit to the city for messages, or I've given Will contact with people in Soberos team. I'm happy to do that.
Deborah, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you,
and for
Deborah.
being there. Matthew, you have your hand up, and thank you for the resources you've shared.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Sorry, I was actually just clapping in response to, to what she was saying. I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Matthew. So I'm really hoping to find through Mohammed and Greg here a way to get everyone on this call involved with a specific action. So, and there's been a lot of ideas circulated. A lot of people have reached out to me directly. Dean Larkin, especially, you've been on the, you extremely patient with us. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're thinking and how you'd like to be mobilized?
Well, thanks, Will. I'm actually picking up my daughter, so I'm out here in the car. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of really great ideas, and I just applaud everybody and the enthusiasm. This is something the city has never seen before, and it's going to take all of us behind it. And Will, you and I have talked about resurrecting this idea of case study 2025 is getting the community behind a rebuilding effort of standardizing some plans for people that can't afford an architect, and yet doing building a better city as a result. And I just think that we have this opportunity to take this unprecedented disaster and really be what LA is and show what we are as a city, and really come out of this better and greater. And really we show our architecture through our residential projects. We always have as a city. This is how we express our architecture. And this is our opportunity, and I really encourage us to continue this enthusiasm. I'm really excited by everybody in this call. I really can't thank you all enough.
Thank you, Dean. We have I'll follow up with you directly on that idea, and I think several others have been reaching out with a very similar idea on how we put that together, and so we'll sort of mobilize a group of people to take a deeper dive on that initiative, and I think it's something that many people will find useful and helpful. Should we go to AM? I'm sorry I'm mispronouncing your name, but welcome to the call. Aham? Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Will, and how are you today?
Good. Thank you.
Awesome. Greg and Mohammed and everyone else, I want to say hello. And I think this is a great effort everyone is putting in. trained as an architect, I can appreciate the built environment. I just want to insert that as we move forward on this effort, we need to keep the builders in the loop, because there is information they can share with us as to how this trajectory is going to transpire. We don't do this in a silo as built environment professionals. Um, it's a wholesome, shall I say, effort. It's not just a siloed effort. So we all need to contribute together and get the built environment people involved as well too. Um, I would like to find a way to get involved more intimately with the conversation and offer my expertise in that direction, as well as how we can bring engineers and other professionals into play. And I heard about the code issues and bringing things up to code. I think there's a lot that our civic leaders have to do with this effort, because we don't want this to happen again in any environment or any neighborhood in Los Angeles or neighboring cities. And to that effect, I think the fire codes and how we protect our cities and built areas from fires and forested areas needs to be reviewed. We can't have houses built all the way up to the edge of the forest. That's just asking for disasters to happen again and again. Those kind of ideas have to be reviewed so we can have a wholesome solution that prevents, at least mitigates these kind of things happening in the future. The last fire that happened in Malibu was back in the 1990s. I had a lot of friends that lost their homes back then. This time around, the Palisades and what's happening close to in Altadena, I know people who live in those areas that lost their homes and businesses. It's very heartbreaking, and we need to do better. That's my 10 cents on this.
If I could just jump
you.
in here. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Greg.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to jump in quickly to your first point about contractors and engineers. And I think you're exactly right. I think I believe there's a group that's kind of forming right now around contractors. But we would want, similar to what I discussed with ASLA and APA and USGBC, we can't have so many people in the room all the time. We need to be, but I think if we did another session with structural and civil and we did another one with contractors, or maybe those two are combined, we need to be working on this holistically and bringing in other levels of expertise. So I really take all your comments to heart. It's really great. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And Marcy, welcome to the call.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I'll try to be brief. I wanted to just thank Will, Mohammed, Greg for the commitment to everybody aligning and working together. And I know it takes time behind the scenes to get all of that organized. I'm struggling to find the publication I read early this morning about all of the private and public groups that are setting up to assist or command and control rebuilding. That's really distressing. And it just feels, I mean, it's great there's energy to do it, but it feels like it's all on a competitive footing. And so I'm hoping and really appreciate your lead in on the call that we're going about this in the way that architects and designers and landscape architects can best do it, with an understanding of the gravity of, how gravity plays on how we build and all of those details that become real realities for people and making change, what's possible. I guess I'm wondering, how can we help ground that approach for others who are now going to see what Caruso's doing, what the city's doing, what the governor's doing, what the federal government's doing, not to politicize, but to understand, hopefully we can be a grounding group, an organization that's steadily being a resource and supportive and productive in the recovery. So just comments, not really new resources.
Thank you, Marcy.
Yeah, thank you, Marcy. I have a lot to share with that, but I'll wait to the end. Hunter, thank you. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you've been putting together and see if we can find a way to amplify?
Sure. Thanks, Will. My name is Hunter Knight. I'm a architect here in LA, over in Mount Washington. So I'm mainly focusing on the Altadena area. And I just got off a call with Jessica Orlando and some other folks from the AIA Pasadena Foothills chapter. So I had been focusing on like a select group of potential clients that lost their home, and trying to issue them just something to sort of give them a framework to understand the process by. So I created a rebuild guide a couple weeks ago with the help of my wife. She did a lot of the copy on it. That's why it actually reads well, and she's on this call too. But it's basically, it's just a basic outline of the process, starting with kind of things you should think about, goals and aspirations, all the way to kind of the design phases and construction process. I try to be brief with it, but I've been sending it out. It came back with some good comments from colleagues and also some interest just to share it to groups. So it's kind of been, I meant this as kind of a control document that would be live on my website, and as information kind of becomes available, it would be updated. But it's gone on to so many groups now. I think it is what it is now. But Jessica and team with AIPF were sort of developing kind of an infomercial or like some kind of graphic production of that with another firm. So there will be that kind of thing rolling out, and I hope will be really helpful. But I think to some of these other points on the call, I think it's really important for the AIA to assume the role as the institution that is, one, trusted, has accurate information, and everybody references for these kind of guidelines and information that can go out to large audiences. And so I think it's really important that we're all on the same page with this information. So I had offered, two things in my guidebook that a lot of clients ask: how much is it going to cost, and how long is this going to take? And I realized there's probably some issues with the AIA offering guidelines of how much this is going to cost. There's been lawsuits around that in the past. So I'm still trying to sort of struggle with how to get that kind of information out. And I know this is a changing landscape. I had a call with someone that lost their house, an artist in Altadena. They got paid out about $450,000 through insurance. They want to build back a house that was kind of a Sears catalog house. It's nothing special. But all these different concepts are coming into play with prefab, and I'm trying to get involved in one of these groups. Sort of master plan ideas, standardized plans we've talked about, and other kind of project delivery ideas, even owner builder, right, to shave down on GC costs. And I realize this could be a thing to kind of get in the weeds on with presenting these different models to clients, but I think there's going to be a lot of tools that come into play for making housing affordable and to build back some of these things that, like this house, for example, that was lost, was built by a Korean vet with windows and sheeting material that came from the Rose Bowl, that was given to people coming back from the war so they could build cheap homes. So I feel like there's a real possibility for innovation, for us to really think through these ideas. And at the same time, we have this 6-month window. And my client, he's saying, I have 3 months or 3 years for paid rent. And so we have this like kind of narrow window before everyone jumps the gauntlet into permitting phases. So we have time to plan, but not that much time. And I realize there's going to be a lot of, it's a fluid and dynamic process, right? So that's a question of how we continue to offer information, broad information, that will be helpful to all these different people, these different folks.
Thank you, Hunter. Greg or Mohammed, jump in at any moment now. Otherwise, we'll just, I want to work with you, Hunter, on this rebuild guide. I want to make sure that we're kind of connecting the dots on all the other rebuild guides that are going out there. And I'll make sure that we're doing something to sort of either catalog all these ideas or find a way to borrow and steal from some of your best practices.
Yeah, I think it's, go ahead, Greg.
No, please go ahead, Mohammed.
No, you first.
Well, I was just gonna say, I was gonna just riff off of what Will was saying, which was, and I tie into what you're saying a little bit there, Hunter, is I've seen probably like 5 or 6 rebuild guides, which is yours is one of them. And I've actually looked at all of them, and they have like cross information that is differing between each one, right? So to your point about consistency, how do we provide that as an organization in terms of accurate information and take the best of maybe what we need to do is, I think that's part of one of these committees is actually to come together and actually formulate some level of consensus around this, what we're going to put out there as facts to the general community. Anyway, I think you would be one person to really help lead those efforts. So I would advocate to kind of get involved in the collective as well. I think you are with Jessica, which is really fantastic. And I think through those efforts, again, I think there's no longer like a Pasadena, LA kind of thing. Hopefully, we're trying to like consolidate everything. So I look forward to hearing more about it.
Yeah, it's thank you, Greg. Thank you, Hunter. As we all know, $400,000 doesn't get you much these days. Goodness knows what it's going to get you in a few months, tariffs, and so on. I think one big area of concern that we have as a community of professionals is those communities who to us are now quantities, who will receive undoubtedly meager payouts and leave. It's a bleak landscape. It's a tough landscape. If you look over the Altadena map, you realize we have middle schools, elementary schools, the Waldorf, a community that, K through 6, 6 through 8, public parks and recreation, the amenities that create a neighborhood, and they're all gone. And I feel like if we get too far into the weeds on the single family, we're missing a chunk of what makes up the urbanism. Frankly, in the best possible way in Altadena, that kind of anonymous vernacular that we all know and love. And there are, I think, real immediate concerns for people to get into interim locations, to look at other existing loopholes that allow building, and they're not loopholes, they're actually laws, to get interim housing, for people to stay in place as land gets abated and mitigated. I think Deborah Weintraub's comments earlier, if we don't pay attention to the burned and toxic land becoming a new ground, figuring out all of the attendant bits and pieces from sewer to septic, right? Speaking to the right people to be able to accurately inform ultimately the single family owner how much the cost of a rebuild will be. It is more than the walls and the roof. There will be fuel mod. There's going to be a lot of stuff. So I feel like we have to, as a community, at the outreach level, with your help, those of you who've expressed that help, to really go boots on the ground and speak to people, help people understand, so help us understand who we might serve. Those of us who've expressed interests in pro bono coalitions or other forms of working together to help secure people in place, we have a lot of work to do. So that's my sense. Sorry if that was a ramble.
I'd like to say I don't know how to click on the hand. This is Ellen Garrett.
Hi, Ellen. Welcome. We'll go to
Hi.
you and then to Jorge. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to say that a couple things. I reacted very strongly to what Marcy said. And actually, yesterday there was an excellent article in the New York Times about rebuilding in LA. And it was outlining the different groups that are turning into what I personally was hoping the most that it would not turn into, but a competition between developers and different opinions about how the city should be rebuilt and accusing the other ones of doing it the wrong way. I think as strongly as we can, it's important to avoid this this Steve Soboroff versus the rebuilding of the Palisades Village, kind of attitude going on, because the issues are so much bigger. But I will say that of the people who have been appointed to the committee that Rick Caruso has formed, some of the people are quite interesting because they do have more visionary ideas about the city as a whole. The one thing I've been disappointed about in Steve Soboroff's comments, although I've always been a huge supporter of his, is that when people inquired as to permitting, what about changing our architecture somewhat to respond to the fires, he replied, "That's not my assignment. I'm only assigned to get people back into the homes that they lost." That, in other words, rebuild what they lost. Exactly. And that is such a lost opportunity. The other thing really quickly that I want to say to Mohammed, or ask Mohammed, there are actually excellent resources available in fire-resistant building from UCLA and UC Davis. And evidently UCLA for years and years has been doing research into fire-resistant building techniques and building adjacent to wooded areas.
Yes,
So
I
if
work.
we could possibly,
Yeah, that's correct. And Professor Hitoshi Abe spent many years working on that. And I think Greg Kochanowski was a consultant to that as well. Greg lost his home in the Woolsey fire in Seminole Springs, and so and has a real life experience, not only with the trauma but with the rebuilding and all of the complexities that go along with keeping that community together. So
yes.
that's an incredible insight. Yes, that's
At
for sure.
UCLA, let's see if I can find this very quickly, because one of the consultants, I'll find it and I'll forward it to you separately, but there's a teacher who's been at UCLA for years, and he's also in the a different division, not the architectural, but he's been doing work in fire-resistant building for years. The last thing I'll say is I just want to mention that Tree People has been very active in making recommendations for what kind of planting is suggested for fire resistance, and they're very happy to collaborate with anything that the AIA does as far as landscape suggestions. And I lied. The very last thing I want to say is Mei Sung, who's on this call, I read all of Mei Sung's guidelines for her clients and others. And of all the things that I've read, hers were the most succinct and informative. So if you're pulling together a document about how do we take the next step, I just want to applaud the information that May provided.
Thank you. I'll reach out to you, May, and try to get that into our sort of catalog of best practices. I want to go on to Jorge. Jorge, you've been extremely patient. Thank you for your time and leadership on this. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Mohammed and Greg. I'm very impressed with the information shared and the inspiration that putting all this community of architects, contractors, engineers, and institutions together working to rebuild LA. I have only one question I would like to ask you. What is the AIA or this group doing to reach out and connect with the public, with the actual people who need this work? What are we doing in terms of reaching out and connect with them, so not only to ourselves but also to see what they have to say, and so we can become a source of information for them?
I think I'll just jump in here really quickly. I think that's a really excellent question. I think there's been a little bit of, I'll just be perfectly frank, speaking for myself, a little bit of apprehension in terms of not feeling like you're opportunist coming into communities after a disaster like this as an architect. I think that there are some looking at disaster recovery centers. We've been trying to get into those or find a way to get a table at those. AIA California has a kind of a kit that they can send you, and you more or less set up within disaster recovery centers where people are already going to see FEMA and get a new driver's license and their birth certificate and everything else. And that we can have a table there just to be a resource of some kind, not provide professional advice necessarily immediately, but be a guide in some way. I do think further down the line, in somewhat of the immediate future, we should be reaching out to some of the local neighborhood councils or organizations as a way of like just providing what could we offer you in a way. I think that should be the question more than here's what we can give you, and see how we can be of service to where they need us to be, meet them where they are necessarily, and see where they need. So that would be my take on it. Yeah.
I think that I agree with Greg, and I think that at the local council level, we will be reaching out where we can in the Palisades, we will, where we can in Altadena, we will. I do think it's important for us to forge links with Steadfast, notwithstanding any of the positions on where Soborov or Caruso are going to go. That is a team that's in motion, and we can have positive influence where it matters. It may not be at the level of the our preferred architectural taste, but we hope that it would be at the level of ecologically sound decisions that are in keeping, that don't retreat from the city's mission to decarbonize.
I want to thank you, Mohammed and Greg. I just want to say one thing real quick, that the AIA is its membership. So whenever a question like that comes up, like what the AIA is doing about it, then I as a staff member really want to find a way to support you as the AIA member to really help make that connection to the community more visible. John Lee, you're on the call. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I don't have a camera. I'm with Dot Architecture. I used to work in LA as an unlicensed architect. I'm now in Utah. I'm licensed here in a few other states. I'm also a general contractor and a former planning commissioner. So I'd really love to get involved respectfully and see what we could do as out-of-state architects, because I know there's such a shortage in manpower. And so I just wanted to see if there's resources or groups. I've talked to some of our consultants and some of our fabricators, and everybody's interested in seeing how we can help, but we're not sure. Are there streamlined ways of getting licensed or for architecture and construction? Has anybody heard anything about resources in that regard? We just love to help, so we're looking for that.
Thank you, John. Well, since you've logged on to this call, I'll definitely have your contact information and keep you connected on where we can sort of mobilize everybody. Justin, welcome to the call. Justin Skaggs.
Hello. Yeah, so I've worked with Will on a few things before. DUX, we do just the dry utility consulting. So for specifically homes in the Palisades, we would be the ones helping you with your encroachment application clearances, if you want underground lines. And, you know, being up here, you definitely see that there's going to be a lot of issues of how LADWP is gonna handle that. So, you know, on my own, I've been kind of looking into, you know, what are the major kind of bottlenecks we're going to run into when people start to submit their new plans. And then, you know, with the intent of everyone undergrounding, there's a few policy changes that need to be made So yeah, we're really welcome to see get feedback on anyone's experience as they're going through those processes. Um, Looking at the maps of what has been destroyed and the homes that remain. When you kind of look at the circuit that comes out of the distribution station on the corner of Sunset and Altridge, basically to refeed a lot of these homes that are remaining, you're going to have to put up pretty much every single overhead line that's existing. So if the goal is to convert all those underground, advocating for how do we actually get that process started. As of Thursday, I talked with the pole spotter for the area. They can't even accept encroachment applications or applications to convert those lines to underground yet. And when I asked what his suggestion was for when people are preparing their new site plans with their architects, do you put those pole lines that are existing on your site plans and the clearances and all that? And he just said at this time, yeah, you would assume that all those poles remain until you get a definite answer. It's not their official feedback, but they just don't have a plan yet. So if you've worked with DWP, you can know that this encroachment or underground conversion application process is super long, very difficult. It's all on the customer that's requesting. So the people that are very motivated and want to move fastest to get their applications in, how do we make it so it's not like a burden on them to push something? Because if you just start at the very far ends of the circuit, start undergrounding without a cost to the neighbors, then it can get done. But we really have to push that together. So sharing information of people's experiences. Will had mentioned there's another DWP meeting on March 19th, I think you said, Will. But yeah, we have to advocate for really pushing that every single home is going to be underground.
So
and
Justin,
yeah,
Justin, I have a request, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this, but between you and Ian and DryX Utilities, between now and March 19th, if you can come up with a really comprehensive recommendation for how DWP should be responding to this at large, that would be so helpful to us, because that technical input, you're right. We cannot go status quo on just rebuilding as they are currently under the, so we're going to need to figure out a really strategic advocacy initiative as it relates to DWP. And I would love your technical input on how to shape that effort. And then for everyone on the call, our next meeting that we have with DWP, it's on a quarterly basis. It will be March 19th at 12 noon. And I'm hoping to really make this the centerpiece of our agenda for that. So I'll keep everyone here posted. Justin, I'm really hoping that you and your team can kind of share some technical insight on how to best do that.
Yeah, I do have some bullet points. I did a cost estimate for a home that I could share to you as well. This one particular house, in order to get the lines removed, if the policies today were in place, she would have to get approval from 29 homes to underground the lines and quit claim the easement. There's also probably other easement issues that if it was prescriptive rights for the poles to be there, that's something that architects are going to need input on. So, I will send you notes. I did some bullet points and specific policies that need to be changed.
Thank you. That'll be super helpful. Ben Loescher, you're on the call. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Yeah, I mean, this has been super interesting. There's so many people on the call that are much more informed about residential architecture than I am, which is wonderful. But my specific interest is really around embodied carbon and what that means in the aftermath of this thing. I'm fairly confident with the priorities in the county and within City Hall that a lot of the things that we're talking about here, streamlining permitting, like removing barriers to things that really ought to get done that, gum up ordinary permitting, are going to get dealt with the help of the folks that are here. But what I do not hear as part of the conversation, and I think it's really important in our current political context, is how we get these two, the county and city, to exercise more leadership in allowing low carbon construction. Because the decarbonization efforts from both the county and the city have really concentrated on operational carbon. That's fine, but I'm scared to death that the reflex is going to be, well, the way that we solve these increasingly intense and frequent fires caused by carbon emissions and climate change is using more Portland cement, stucco, hardy panels, all of that kind of stuff. And they will not fix what has been an organizational problem for both of them, which is like a hostility to low carbon, inexpensive and low tech building materials like hempcrete, which is now an IRC in the IRC. Straw bale, I don't think has been adopted. That appendix has existed for quite some time in California, in either of these jurisdictions. Light straw clay. This is not a time to be mandating things, obviously, but I think it's a unique opportunity for us to ask the city and county to show leadership in allowing and helping some of these materials get used for people that want them, because we know that is not going to happen from the federal side anymore.
Yeah, Ben, we share your concerns and interests, and I can tell you from recent experience, professional experience, that we were looking at an alternative foundation system on a hillside that was not a concrete foundation system, went through the LARR process, and unbeknownst to us as it was sunsetting, and the responses were moving to ISO numbers 17065, which are for products, and we're not going to look at this anymore, and really grading. It was grading that held this up. So I do think that in terms of what you're saying, the amount of erosion control that's necessary, the amount of retention that's necessary, the amount of foundations that will be poured in the conventional way. The retort was, we don't see that it's going to be, you've got to prove financial hardship, and not even Jesus could prove financial. So,
right.
So it's not just building and safety. It's a whole host of people that we need to sit at the table with, and we know that they're stressed out too. We empathize, just as one of the previous questioners was right to say, well, what are we doing, or how are we reaching out to communities? I think we need to find partners in all of these departments and divisions, county and city, empathize with them because they're stressed, they're understaffed, and find a way to chip at this from below the ground up, because the rapid rebuilding that's necessary, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I think it's going to require getting the supervisors and City Hall to provide these folks with the resources they need to take this on. I mean, I'll say that my experience with both jurisdictions, there are some times where it's a case of animus or bias, but more often it's just a lack of resources. These departments, we all know, struggle to do their what they're ordinarily charged to do. So when someone comes in and says, I'd like to do something different, and it's going to take you a bunch of time that you don't have to evaluate it, that's not always welcome. But I think the political angle can help with that.
Thank you, Ben. I really want to work with you on this, so let's stay in touch. And I put your link in the chat here for anyone else that's curious about the petition that you're circulating. Ismar, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, Will. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I don't want to derail the conversation, but when I raised my hand, we were in a completely different topic. But I think this conversation about infrastructure, about sustainability, about resilient design is pretty important. When we were talking at the beginning of this conversation, we heard an update of how all these chapters are now aligning and not working independently, right? Now, with the help of AI California, we are sharing a wider net of resources. But I think, Will, you share online the link for the La Cañada group, our foundation, which has started to get set up. I know that Joanna had a different group, right? I forget what the group's name is. But I see a lot of different groups, and not to take away from the initiative that they're doing, because I think they're going to do a phenomenal job to help the community. But is there a way to overlap with those groups as well, so we can share the resources? I think that could be helpful.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, Ismar, this is a great recommendation. Harper's on the call right now. Harper and her partner were two of the ones that really came out of the Harper, do you want to share a little bit about your ideas on how we can synergize or synchronize?
Thank you.
Hi everyone. Yeah, it was kind of happenstance, but we started a Slack group. We use Slack in the office, and so we got on a call with Rachel, and she had close to 300 people in a Zoom call, and so we started a Slack group, posted it to that, and since now it's like 550 people. We're trying to use it as a platform for people to post new information that they're finding out live, and also use it as a way to ask questions to fellow professionals. It's more definitely on the professional side for the AEC community as we navigate this. So some of us are more experienced in residential architecture, others are just people wanting to help. But I think it is a really great platform to have honest and open conversations in a very quick and easy manner, rather than having to search and slog through all the information yourself. We're definitely open to any input or insight people may have on how to make it better. We're trying to keep it not as a place that people come to quote unquote advertise their services, but definitely more of a place of information sharing and gathering. So we would love to have anyone who's not yet a part of it join, and any assistance in managing it, we're all ears.
Thank you, Harper. Yeah, Ismar, you're right. There has been an amazing abundance of passion, leadership, expertise, resources being shared. And then that was something that we, we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we amplify all of this common knowledge? And I think in a way that's perhaps why we're still trying to figure out exactly the strongest foundation to build all of this together. I'll just add one thing real quick before going to others. What I've noticed is a lot of times the elected officials or the decision makers at large, they go directly to their friends that are architects as opposed to going through the AIA. And that's natural. Those are the relationships they already have. But as a consequence, as an institution, we're short-circuited quite a bit. So if any of you are on the call and you get a call from an elected official saying, hey, can you get involved with this in your experience as an architect? That's wonderful. But if you can also make sure you connect the AIA to that way we can all fold ourselves into that effort and sort of gain and benefit and learn from each other. Otherwise, If the institution is short-circuited, then there's no way to really harmonize the collective response. So that's what I would say to any of the people on the call that might be tapped by the leadership directly. Looking forward to sort of leveraging and supporting you. May, you're on the call now. Thank you for your patience. And once again, we're here for you.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. Hi, Harper. I think we met a little while ago. And thanks, Alan, for your little endorsement. So what, as a homeowner and as an architect in the Palisades, there's a couple things I want to address. Like this, even with executive order, this has been a very fluid process. Like yesterday, on the PPCC Zoom call, there are talks about increasing the percentage to 25% for the houses that are less than 2,500 square feet. So there's so much information out there that, you know, that it's almost hard to do a handbook. And also I think would be great if AIA could, you know, put together some sort of guideline in terms of materials for even like, you know, the homeowners are willing to build the houses themselves. I go back to the old days when they're able to self-build. Another sort of immediate issue I kind of see for a lot of the homeowners who cannot afford to hire an architect would be, one thing that the insurance company is looking for is recreating their existing plan. And then also they want to have a future plan. And I don't know if we could tap into the students in terms of helping homeowners to recreate their existing plan in terms of the bubble diagram, and also recreating from the Zima maps in terms of the footprint. So at least that there's something to present to the insurance people that, you know, this is our house, not taking the insurance adjuster's word for it, because the insurance adjuster are just going to take what's there and then recreate a plan as they see fit. For example, like, you know, a homeowner would just go in, and the insurance adjuster would ask, okay, where are the ceilings? And a typical homeowner would basically say wood or plaster. But the thing is that it's probably more intricate than that. It's with crown molding, it's ton of groove wood slatted ceiling, blah, blah, blah. It would be great if there's some sort of assistance helping the homeowners to describe what they have in order to maximize what they could get back from the insurance company. That's what I see as a sort of immediate need for most of the homeowners in Palisades and also in Altadena and everywhere else. And, you know, I think advocating for the policy changes, there's a lot of things that we still don't know about, like dual jurisdiction, how to deal with urban forestry. Do we still need an environmental report? When I asked these questions yesterday at LDBS, nobody knew the answer. They just assumed, yes, you still have to do it, which is ridiculous. What environmental report? So that's, you know, sort of like what I see as the immediate needs for the homeowners in these tree burnout areas.
Thank you, May. If you don't mind, you know, let's follow up offline. I'd love to really find a way to, you know, respond more directly to some of these really, you know, specific experiences that I think we'll gain a lot of insight from you. And I know you're at a point where you've lost your home and you've lost the side of your business, but I think we could still like really leverage a lot of the insight that you have to share.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's connect after this.
Thank you. David, and then Esther, and then Derek. We're going to end the conversation with Brooks, and then we'll keep the dialogue moving.
Okay, thank you, Will. Yeah, Mohammed and Greg and Will, thank you very much for your, you know, setting this up and making it a forum for us all. I'm actually an RIBA member.
Same, David.
Okay, I came over here in the late 70s, and quite frankly was horrified to see that you build houses out of sticks in the colonies. And as a result of that, kind of ironically, I lost a house to a fire in the Santa Cruz Mountains in 1985. We closed escrow on the Tuesday. On Sunday, we were standing in the ashes of our new house. And I was determined from that point on, I was going to do something about this. And coincidentally, about a year later, came across a product that we now call ICFs. Went over to Germany to kind of review the original product, which was called Isorast over there, and ended up bringing that product over here. So my partner and I actually initiated the ICF industry in the United States. That was part of what we could do in order to be able to design and build houses that were highly fire resistant. And we've done a lot of that work since. There's a few sort of misnomers that, you know, that we have managed to really dispel. One of them being that fire resistant homes have to be more expensive. Absolutely not true. And we've proven that in many ways. Yes, it has to do with the materials that you use, but in some ways the design of the home. And in particular, I'm sure all of us that design homes have come across clients who their main thing is how many square feet can I possibly get out of this building site? And a lot of, as we know, a lot of it has to do with ego. Well, I think one of the lessons that we should be learning is that we don't necessarily need these McMansions. Quality in this case seems to, I hate to use the word trump, but quality seems in this case to trump quantity. And I think we as architects in some ways can take on additional responsibilities in advising our clients the best way to go. So in terms of being able to produce a higher quality home, which may cost a bit more square foot per square foot, if we were to reduce the size of the home and still satisfy the client's requirements, we would be better off as a society with safer buildings to live in and safer communities. So along with that goes, I put on the chat that there's some entities that I feel that we should be involved with too in the list of sort of advocacies that we're talking about being involved with. One to me is the NAHB, National Association of Home Builders, or you know whatever the local NAHB is down in LA. I live in Pebble Beach, by the way. We call it the BIA, or the Building Industry Association up here, because I think that can very much be a two-way street. I think we have a responsibility as a profession to, a responsibility to become more responsible in the way that we design these buildings with the lessons that we're learning, and involving the NAHB in terms of what we could teach them and what they could bring to us in return would be a huge benefit for our future. I think the other aspect of this would be involving the IBHS, the Institute of Business and Home Safety, which is basically the insurance companies club in Florida or North Carolina. We've done, I think this is a responsibility that we have to be.
Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry.
So we'll go to Esther Kim.
Sorry. I'm sorry about that. Somebody ran in the room and they shouldn't.
No problem.
So in terms of the insurance companies, we've done a bunch of work with insurance companies, and we're working with Chubb right now actually, because they're basically a high-end insurance company where we've been working with them to create complete building envelopes, taking every aspect of that building envelope and making everything equally fire resistant, including the windows, the doors, everything, so that there are no weak links in that chain. And Chubb is very interested now in working with us in order to be able to recreate their market in California. They walked away from where I am in Pebble Beach a while back. So involving the insurance, at least some of the insurance companies in what we're doing here, I think would be a good thing, because I believe that one of our responsibilities is to look at the future of these buildings that we design and make sure that our clients are happy with the way in which they're built so that they are insurable, so that we don't have to be paying $100,000 a year for insurance as some of the houses down here in Pebble Beach are. So I think if we can take on that kind of responsibility, it's going to help our profession in the future.
David, thank you. I need to kind of get us wrapped up because we need to move on to next steps. But let's keep you in touch, and I 100% hear you. We need to connect with all these other institutions as well, especially the insurance agents. I want to end the Q&A here with Brooks. So we'll go to Esther, Derek, and then James, and then I'll open the floor back up to Mohammed and Greg.
Okay. Thank you, Will, by the way, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Esther, welcome.
Hi, am I on the screen? I can't tell.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. Thanks, Will. I have been working sort of parallel and in a multidisciplinary way. So I just wanted to introduce myself to everyone. And please help me figure out how to integrate with AIA, because I don't want to be working on cross purposes. But I'm hosting a workshop. I hosted the call in the Cavalry event previously. I'm just building on some personal connections that I've been making. But I want to highlight 3 things. One, I'm hosting a zoning policy meeting with lots of lawyers talking about what everybody's talking about, like how much are we going to be able to rebuild or not? And of course, that has to do with all the housing initiatives that may or may not be rolled back. It's a higher level discussion, even beyond architecture. But if anybody's interested in that, I'd be happy to roll in AIA and figure out how to make that a bigger conversation. Second, I've been talking with people about financing models that might be innovative or even creative with banks and other type of loans. And I would love to have an integrative meeting in that regard. And then third, I am hosting both a workshop, which is multidisciplinary, everybody who's a worker, all the way through interior designers, real estate people. And then I've reached out to Art Center College of Design, where I used to work, and they agreed to host an outreach to the East Side location. And World Central Kitchen jumped on board, saying that they would also make it an opportunity to provide hot food, and then pretty much transform it into a more community event that isn't just about rebuilding, but just to bring people together. And also to start as a listening event. And that will be extremely scope limited with regard to architecture advice. There will be 0 design advice given there, and no soliciting. But I wanted to just throw out that I've been trying to do all these projects, and I would like to figure out how to fit in with AIA opportunities and folks. But there's stuff that's been organizing. I posted a PDF. I'm trying to pull together how many architecture organizations are already working on things that are perhaps outside of the AIA, and maybe do something all together that we can literally be face to face and figure out how to be one, just as described.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. Yeah, we can go into all that. I'm happy to. There's like literally dozens and dozens, and it's amazing. This is such a beloved city and place, and we're all working together. We'll go to Derek, and then James, and then Brooks. Derek Ryder? I think you're still on mute.
Can't hear you.
Derek, we're having trouble hearing you. We'll come back to you. We'll go to James next, real quick.
Yeah,
Hey guys, this is James. I'm a licensed architect also with Angeli's Recovery Collective, which is one of those subgroups. And I think I wanted to build on that point. Like there are a lot of these initiatives that are ongoing with previous relationships. And I just would like to open up as a liaison or vice versa to see how we could help each other out. One of the initiatives that's ongoing is using modular or precision built as a potential solution to some of the recovery needs. And we're studying that and working with some designs on the factory. So, you know, some of these ideas, and we've got another initiative going on using GIS from some volunteers from UCLA that we can extract, you know, plot information. But just some of these things, like they're moving ahead, and just wanted to open up a channel to like help out with you guys or vice versa. If you guys want to help out with our small team, we just like to keep it focused, like amongst a couple dozen people. So it's a little more focused task group, but just throwing it out there. I'll put my info in the chat.
Thanks, James, and keep in touch with me too on that, and then I'll fold you into our comprehensive list. It'll be wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you, Will.
Derek, are you able to hear or talk? I think you're still muted. All right, as Derek, we'll give Derek another shot. Brooks Dunn, we'll go to you next.
Hi, Brooks Dunn. I'm an architect here in Marina Del Rey. This was something I put in the chat. I'm just wondering, you know, I saw on one of Greg's slides, you know, educating the profession about perils of pro bono work. And I share the comment, you know, it just outreach about work doesn't really feel good. Talking about soft costs doesn't really feel good. And I'm just wondering if there is a way that the AIA could potentially raise a fund to provide project grants to people who could not otherwise afford an architect. I know there's been a lot of fundraising around the fire, and I don't know how some of those groups are planning to distribute money. But and I don't have a background in development, but that would definitely be something I'd be interested in putting together, especially for those of us who are smaller firms who might not, you know, be able to put as much time as we would like into a pro bono effort. If there's a way to make it pro bono for the people who've been affected.
Brooks, thank you so much for that thought and for your patience. I think there is a lot of interest and enthusiasm really to look at addressing this, and I don't know the answer yet. Derek, do you want to try?
I really welcome those thoughts, Brooks. Thank you.
And there are, yeah, I've been researching various philanthropic groups, and you've probably been seeing the same, Brooks. Some of whom are looking at providing money to folks for professional services or soft costs in some way, and trying to do that on like a sliding based on an income bracket, right? So I think it's partially to Esther's comments, I think, as well. I mean, how can we start getting in contact with some of those individuals that not have it be self-serving in a lot of different ways, but just provide our input in terms of what might be expected in terms of some of those costs as they're trying to help individuals out and plan their fundraising accordingly. So anyway, it's really good thinking there.
Jump in. There's a little bit of piggyback on this. Like, there's been discussions around different land trusts purchasing land and then maybe gifting it back. If that land's sold, then it can make some people whole and then use that for soft cost redevelopment purposes. But it's all in flux. Interesting.
I've seen some of that too, Hunter. That's really an interesting tack, and I think there's a lot of I think partly what we've been discussing behind the scenes a little bit is there a kind of economic sort of think tank, doing tank kind of group that needs to formulate around some of these issues.
So Derek, what did you get your audio working? If not, we'll have to follow up with you soon. Derek Ryder, everybody, thank you for being here. So Greg and Mohammed, I know we're right at 5:30. Any closing thoughts? We're going to be meeting Saturday as the AIA Board of Directors and the ACLA Board of Directors, and we are going to be putting all of our committees. We have about 12 or 13 different committees that will also be working on this. So our next step will be to identify ways to bring all of you into those efforts, and also looking at ways to synthesize and amplify all of the efforts that all the other organizations and other working groups are doing. We know that there's quite a lot of activity, and it's an amazing time for us, as Angeline knows. So Greg and Mohammed, I'll sort of leave it open to you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg. Yes, we'll get back to you with some action plans soon.
Yeah, I mean, Will, you summed it up pretty well. I think we're organizing all these folks to come together, and organizing the mechanism to get all of you involved has been kind of the heavy lift over the last couple of weeks. So now that's all happening. And so I think as we now meet in groups on Saturday and we meet next week, we'll start really being able to coalesce all these efforts and energy. So, I mean, thank you all for attending the meeting tonight. Showing up is 90% of the effort. And so I really appreciate all the enthusiasm and knowledge and compassion that all of you guys are showing. So proud to be a part of this community.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
please
everybody.
reach out. Yeah, reach out to me if there's anything that you would want to make sure that we're keeping track of, or finding a way to integrate ourselves together with. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Dankeschön aus Berlin.